and welcome to the Sailing and Cruising the East Coast of the United States podcast. I'm Bela and Mike.
And I'm Mike Wasserman.
Hey, Mike, today's guest on the podcast is Carter Yepsen. Carter has been a frequent guest on this podcast, and in this episode, we're going to talk about the process he went through in obtaining his United States Coast Guard captain's license. I found our conversation to be very informative and in many ways eye-opening. That's what's involved in getting that license.
Yeah, Bela, it's great. I always enjoy your check-ins with Carter. He's an interesting guy. And I think listeners will like this episode. And look out, I think listeners should look out for the many benefits of getting the Coast Guard captain's license, the complexities of going through the process, which is pretty in-depth, as you'll see, and the steps listeners might want to take in order to pursue their license. So you might want to take some notes along the way.
Hey, these are all great points, Mike. Now let's dive right into my conversation with Carter Yepsen. Hello, Carter. Welcome back to the podcast.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hey, so nice to see you again, Carter. You recently got your United States Coast Guard license. So I wanted to sort of devote this episode to that experience and what's entailed. So Let me ask the first question. So what was your sort of motivation for getting your Coast Guard license?
Well, it's really threefold, three things. The first is I'm a lifelong learner. And you're probably aware of that saying in business that if you're not moving forward, you're moving backward. And I just always like to be, working on something. And so that seemed like a logical thing to do, just to improve my confidence while I'm out on the water. So that was the first reason. The second reason, it's a little longer story, but is you might recall, and I'm the classic example of 2 years ago I retired and bought a sailboat, and as part of the process, my broker said, you got to make sure you can get insurance. And so we put that as a contingency, and it was tough to get insurance. I finally did get insurance, but I paid a lot for it. And the insurance went up another 10% this year. And I said, well, wait a minute. So I said, reapplying for insurance and having a Coast Guard credential certainly couldn't hurt. And lo and behold, I saved 66% on my insurance this year for same coverage. I mean, we need pretty good coverage to be in a safe harbor marina, as you know, and $500,000 liability. So that was the second motivation. It couldn't hurt. And the third motivation is that I'm trying to get more into blue water sailing and crewing on long distance deliveries. And I did a couple of those this year, and it certainly helps to have that credential to get on a boat.
Yeah, very nice.
So
they all make reasonable sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's say someone's listening to this and they say, "Hey, I want to get my Coast Guard license as well." And my understanding is there's various different levels of Coast Guard license, right? There's sort of like
Correct.
the entry level for the.
Yeah, and that's what I did. I did the entry level.
Okay.
And then there are higher levels. I mean, if you were really working in the maritime industry, you would look for those higher levels. And then there are also endorsements. So you can get your license with a sailing endorsement. Like if you were crewing on a boat that took people out, 6 days a week, something like that, you might want that sailing endorsement. If you work for a towing company, there's a towing endorsement. And then there are all sorts of specialized types of licenses. If you are an engineer or a mechanic or working cranes and things like that, the list is very long. But I got what is officially known as the OUPV, or the operator of an uninspected passenger vessel, merchant mariner's credential. So it's a OUPV MMC. It's known in the industry as a six-pack. And a six-pack means you can take up to 6 people for hire for money on an uninspected vessel. So it means I could take people out on my sailboat if my insurance company would allow that. for money and do it legally.
Got it.
So you can call it a captain's license, but on the form it doesn't say anything about a captain. But unofficially, in the industry, you can call yourself a captain, even though you're really just a captain of your own sailboat.
Right. Well, you're a cap. If you're a captain of your own sailboat, you're a captain. Right.
So, I can take you through the process. I mean, it's not particularly, any one part of it is not particularly hard, but if you add the whole thing up, the whole process, it takes perseverance and patience and endurance, to get it. It did take me about 9 months from starting when I decided I'm going to do it. I signed up with an online school that worked out great. So I got access to all their online materials and practice tests, and they sort of virtually guarantee you're going to pass. They administer the test on behalf of the Coast Guard.
Got it.
So it's sort of a comprehensive end-to-end process.
Got it.
And it worked out pretty well. But I did, as I got into it and got further into it, I realized there's a lot of steps to it. It's not just studying, the 6 books they sell you and taking a test. There are a lot of other aspects to getting the license, and I can walk through that process.
Yeah, that would be great. Now, is it sort of a self-paced? The one that you took, is that sort of self-paced?
Yep, self-paced. You sign up, you pay your $600, and you have access to all the materials over the course of 12 months. And I forget how many modules there were, but it's probably 30 hours of listening to somebody talk and then taking the tests at the end, and then they have a couple sample tests for the exam. Yeah, that you go through.
Yeah, and is the test purely a written test, or is there a practical component to it as well?
It's entirely written. Yeah, so nothing on the water. But to get the MMC, you do have to document that you have spent 360 days on the water. That's over your sailing career, and 90 of those days have to have occurred in the last 3 years.
Got it.
And you have to document it, all the way down to the registration of the boat or the documentation number of the boat. And if it was somebody else's boat, they have to attest to it. So I had to go pretty far back. If you do the math, 20 days sailing that's a pretty good summer. I had to find the registration for a boat that I owned in 1995. Yeah, I did find it.
Okay.
But
okay,
so it's a lot of online studying, and the only thing that's really more, rather than just answering questions, is that you do have to do a navigation test. So part of the exam is they give you, you have a big chart and dividers and a pencil and an eraser, and you have to answer 10 navigation questions. And then you take that map with all your notes on it, and you fold it up and put it in a sealed envelope and send it in certified mail. That's how they determine that you did it.
Wow.
Did it the right way. Now, it's not that difficult. If you've taken ASA 105, the navigation class, and I'm sure a lot of your listeners have, that's a lot more advanced than the Coast Guard.
Yeah.
Yes. That part of the exam was pretty easy for me. So the 4 parts to the exam, 4 different modules, and it takes about 2 hours to go through it. And again, I did it in a virtual environment. I didn't do it in a classroom environment. So they've got a pretty fancy computer program that locks down your computer, takes control of the audio and video, and you have to walk around the room, with your computer to make sure that there's no notes on your desk or no one in the room. And then there's somebody proctoring that exam, or basically they review it probably
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
sure that you weren't cheating.
Got it. So you took the test at home on your
Yeah, took it at
computer,
home. Yeah.
but it is sort of virtually proctored.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yes.
Got it. That sounds pretty advanced.
Yeah. Yeah.
And refresh my memory. I know you said this. How many number of hours do you have to prove that you've spent on the water?
It's 360 days, and a day
360.
is a full day. It's I think it's supposed to be an 8-hour day. There might be some exceptions of 4-hour days, but it's not an afternoon of sailing or going out for a 2-hour, joyride. It's supposed to be a full day that you are captaining, or you are at the helm of that boat.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's quite a lot. That's quite a bit.
That is. That's a significant, and to document it properly can be a challenge for some folks.
Yes.
Particularly if you don't have your own boat.
In the application, and I do have the application here. It's all of, well, if you can't see it, it's a pile of papers about a half an inch thick of all the different forms you have to fill out. And there's one form per vessel that you are on. So you have to document what the vessel is and where it was, and where its home port was. Because there was also, in addition to the different types of Coast Guard licenses, you get a license for either ocean, blue water, or the next level down is coastal. The next level down from that is Great Lakes. And then the last one is inland waters. And that's what I got. Even though I probably spent 100 of those 360 days coastal cruising, they still would only give me a license for inland waters.
Got it.
So does that matter to anybody? Not yet. I think they'd have to look at pretty much the fine print.
Yeah.
To see that it was inland waters.
Yeah. So one of the clear messages here that I'm taking away from this is, if this is something you're considering, then start documenting stuff now. Right. And if you can get yourself on a delivery, or you can get yourself on someone else's long passage on the boat, figure out what documentation you need, take care of it at the moment, and get their signature and get all that information, because going backwards has got to be really a challenge. I mean, I'm just thinking about, okay, I went on this person's boat from Nova Scotia to Baltimore, but you probably, like a lot of your listeners, you may have done a bareboat charter. Yeah.
Right. And I've done 4 of those, and where I was captain in the boat, but I don't have any record of it.
Right.
So you could get a record of it. I'm sure you could call the moorings or wherever you went through and send them the paperwork, but you would have to do that and get that. It's basically another piece of paper for each vessel you were on that has to be documented and signed by the owner of the vessel.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is not a spur of the moment thing that you can do. This takes some planning. And,
so the other couple other big steps, I mean, you have to get a very specific physical from a medical doctor. And it's not just your run-of-the-mill physical. It has a lot of paperwork that the doctor themselves has to fill out and sign. And there's also a vision test, and it's not the same vision test that you would take at the DMV. It is a test for color blindness as well as peripheral vision. So interesting eye test. There's a hearing test. So they add all this up, and then this gets submitted to not the same place you submit the rest of your application. You get sent to the medical division of the Coast Guard. Then you have to get a drug test. And so while I was getting my physical, I said, doctor, can you administer a drug test? And she said, well, sure. It's got to be for these 10 things. It's in the application. No problem. So I've got one we actually do for some of the scientists that work out at the nuclear lab, out in Milton. And I said, yeah, that's even better. And she said, yep. So I did that. She said, unfortunately, that's not covered by your insurance. And I said, I understand. So I paid for it. I got it back and then submitted it with my application to the Coast Guard. And they said, this is not the correct drug test. and then you can wait online, on the call center or send an email. And I did realize I have a couple examples of this, 60 days until I really got my application submitted, and then you wait 90 days to get your license. Don't try to negotiate with the Coast Guard. They get 77,000 applications a year.
Holy camole! Wow.
Yeah. There's it's they don't have a great reputation for turning these things around quickly. So there are a lot of statistics online. But 77,000 applications. I forget how many are in the queue at any one time, and between 60 and 90 days is when you'll get your license back. That's after everything is correct. And so I had to do the drug test again. So finally, I figured out that it's don't try to get the better is not always what they're looking for. So I found out the specific DOT blood test. So I had to go to another lab, and where it's all about the chain of custody and for the drug test in this case.
Yeah.
That was one. CPR is another example. So I thought CPR that you and I take for our ski patrol obligation would be sufficient. It's not on the Coast Guard list of approved CPR classes. So I had to go take another CPR class.
Oh, wow.
And then there's a specific form that they fill out that the Coast Guard's looking for, and then they got approved like that. So those are the examples of the why you have to be patient and perseverant.
Yeah. Now, once you get the license, is there a lifespan to it?
Yes, 5 years. 5 years, and then you just reapply. I imagine you have to have a physical again, and then it's a easy reapplication process.
Right.
But it's good for 5 years.
Do you need to demonstrate any certain number of hours on the water with that reapplication?
I do not believe so.
Got it.
I do not.
Okay.
Not positive about that. I'm not an expert on that, and I'll worry about that in another 4 years.
Right. Very nice.
And another thing you have to get, I should mention. So in my little billfold here with my license, I also have my medical certificate, which comes from another credentialing authority. And then the third thing is you get a TWIC, a TWIC card, a Transportation Workers IC something card. So that's the same card that somebody that works at the airport or works at a shipping port would have. So it's a pretty high, it has a background check and you're fingerprinted and all that. You need a TWIC to get the Coast Guard license. So that's another step and another place you have to go to and another fee you have to pay for. And the TWIC, I think, also lasts 5 years.
I see. Now, when you signed up for this course, what was the name of the company that you did that with?
It is Mariner's Learning System.
Got it. Now,
they're very popular online classes with very professional. The textbooks, which are optional, you can view everything online. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like to have a highlighter and read things. So you can buy the books for another $150 on top of the cost of the course.
Did they give you any guidance on these other things like the eye exam and the TWIC and all that stuff, or did you have to figure that out on your own?
They have a very good checklist, but I did have to fill it out on your own. There's an option. A couple of the places, I mean, there are literally 100 places you can take. Imagine if there's 77,000 people applying. Right. There are hundreds of schools. In New England, all around the coastal U.S. If you want to go take the class there, and they will help you with the application. There's optional services of people that will apply for you. might have been worth it. If I was in a hurry, if I had a job on the line, it probably would have made a lot of sense to pay for that service, a couple $100. Yeah, I don't know. When I bought my boat, I paid for a service to help me with my documentation.
Yes, as I did too.
Okay.
Yes.
It was all the stupid money, but they know how to fill out the forms and where to send them, and everything was
Right.
stress-free. So I didn't go the stress-free route and did it myself, even though they do have a very nice checklist. It still wasn't everything wasn't obvious. Little things you have to scan everything in, send the PDFs in. There's a little fine print. The PDF attachment can't be larger than 10 megabytes. Otherwise, you have to break it into multiples. So of course I didn't see that the first time, and then 7 days later I get a an automatic response that my attachment was too big. It was just these little things.
Right.
And of course I think I was actually spending a lot of time on the boat, so I couldn't just I'd get to it 5 days later when I was back in front of my computer.
Right. So take us through sort of the course itself, can you break it down into whatever it is, 5, 6 major modules of sort of knowledge content that you have?
Yeah. Again, and I'll keep it kind of general.
Yeah.
But there are 4 components to the test that you have to take. And as I mentioned before, one is navigation. So with a chart, they'll give you a problem to solve, get from A to B, or here are some lat long coordinates, and tell us how you get from, if you go this direction with this much drift or tide, where are you going to end up? So, and they give you, there are 10 problems that you have to solve, navigation problems. Then there's seamanship, which is the big book, and that's everything from life vests to battery safety to fire extinguishers to how to troubleshoot a gasoline versus a diesel engine versus that sort of stuff. How many people you can have on a boat, that type of thing. Then there are rules of the road. Right away types of things, what type of vessel has right away over the other, and that's very, very extensive. I mean, all the way from canoes and rowboats to ocean liners and tugboats, towing barges, and in between. And then there's the international rules versus U.S. and inland rules. As you know, as you go up the Mississippi River, things change. Right. So that's pretty comprehensive. That's the third part, and then the fourth part would be, I said, rules of the road, navigation, seamanship. I think they call it maritime law, which are really more of that goes along with rules of the road. But the last one, and it is how to identify vessels in terms of lights, flags. And lots of memorization. So things that I probably won't have to use a lot, but I certainly know where to go look up that information now.
Right.
But there are a lot of questions on that. When if you see these 3 lights, what does it mean?
Yes.
And what do you do? Those types of things.
Yeah.
So as a result of it, I went and picked up the Coast Guard Navigation Rules and Regulations Handbook that I keep on the boat, which is a great reference, and U.S. Chart number 1, which you might have had. I have those 2 documents that I got as part of the class, and that I keep as references on board.
Yeah.
So other thing I should bring up is the cost of this. So again, you can take a class, go away and take a class for $1,200, $1,500, but you still have to. There's a cost for the exam. There's a cost for the TWIC card, $120 quick was $125. Books are $150. A drug test at LabCorp is $175. You parts of the physical probably aren't covered by insurance because you have special eye exams and
Right.
the like. So that might be $100 copay, might be $500 copay. I don't know what your deal is. And then the cost of the exam, mine was $550 because it's a $700 course, and I got a 25% discount because I timed it right. But you add it up, it's $1,500.
Yeah.
As well as a lot of days, driving for appointments and things like that. So it's not just something you take on lightly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's a big accomplishment, man. I mean, to achieve it and all the knowledge, where I'm at the marina, I can kind of look down and see the shipping channel on the Narragansett Bay. And so frequently there's boats moving at night, and oftentimes, I can see them, and I'm looking at the lights, and I'm going, okay, Bela, I can't even figure out which lights are on land and which lights are on the boat most sometimes.
Right, sure.
Because it's not out in the middle of the ocean, right? I mean, it's surrounded by all sorts of other red lights and green lights, stop lights on cars and all sorts of stuff. And man, that's got to be, at least for me, that would be one of the most challenging things, is to figure out all those lights and what they mean, because they're those light patterns are rich with information.
Absolutely. And as you know better than most, in the Narragansett Bay, there's some active fishermen or fishing channels there, where there are boats just going up and down fishing. So it really helps at night or even any time to know who's got the right of way.
Yeah.
Just because you're sailing doesn't mean they're going to move for you, and they don't have
That's
to.
right. That's right. And they don't have to. Right. So don't be misled to thinking that a sailboat always has the right of way.
Right. Exactly.
There's many times it does not.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's interesting. So what parts were sort of, how to ask this question, sort of the biggest surprise for you? It was like, holy crap, I didn't expect I needed to know that.
I think just the amount of memorization, particular of those light and signal patterns.
Yeah.
Because again, then there's international versus U.S. and coastal. There's subtle differences, and they test you on those.
Yeah.
So I always I shoot to get 100% right. So on those part, I think I got maybe out of 100, I got a 94.
Yeah.
One of the part I got a 98, and I got 2 100s on two of the parts.
Wow,
So,
congratulations.
but yeah, I didn't want to go into the test, thinking that I didn't know something. So I did a lot of studying, a lot of memorization.
And like you said, for the test, you can't have any reference material. So it literally is memorization of those things.
Exactly. Yeah. The desk, they tell you your desk and walls have to be clear, and you have to take pictures, the live video of it, and your desk actually has to be pulled away from the wall. And for some reason, I don't know, but
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
so yeah, I will say I did learn a lot. How much have I retained? I don't know, but I know where to get the information very, very quickly. So I'm not daunted by what to do if I see a big vessel, that I can just make out with binoculars. I know what to do.
Yeah. Well, like with many things, having learned it once, even though you forget, you if you can see it again, in a reference book, you pick it up really quick.
Yeah.
Where if it's the first time you're looking at it and going, oh, what the heck is this, man? You can get yourself in big trouble. So there's clearly value to what you've accomplished. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So cool.
So, yeah, I'm toying around. Do I help out with the Coast Guard Auxiliary up on Lake Champlain?
Nice.
Might be something in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, because your boat's on Lake Champlain now, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and you intend to leave it there for a couple of years?
My plan is next fall, next Labor Day, to have the mast taken down and go down the Champlain Canal and get a little salt water on the boat again.
Ah, well,
Yeah.
if you want some crew, if you want someone who's unlicensed, but sort of knows what they're doing, keep me in mind. I might be interested in that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's about 5 days to get from Lake Champlain down to New York City.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of history along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. Well, that sounds kind of cool. And then you have plans after that? Once you after next fall, down south to the islands or something?
Actually thinking of heading north and then keeping having the boat pulled up Rockland, Maine.
Oh, okay.
And then next spring we'll see where we go. I'm thinking I don't have air conditioning on the boat, and I like cold weather, and so I'm thinking of going even a little further north.
Very nice.
Maybe to Nova Scotia or Newfoundland.
Yeah. Nova Scotia is beautiful.
Then bring the boat back the following summer. Back to
that
Champlain.
sounds great. Yeah, that sounds great, Carter. Yeah, super. And remind listeners what boat you have.
I have a Sabre 38 Mark II. It's 38-foot sloop.
Yep. Very nice.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Keeps me very busy over the winter. I always, like everybody, I have a long list of little things to do. The boat's in great shape, but a lot of little things. Next month I'm taking a diesel mechanics class.
Ooh.
Which is a hands-on class. So I
yeah.
don't know if I get a certificate or anything, but I do want to know a lot more about how diesels work and how to fix things myself when I'm bobbing around.
Yeah, that's one of those interesting things. The previous episode I recorded several weeks ago, a person who started on Lake Champlain and sailed down to the islands with his wife after he retired, and then sailed back to Georgia, has their boat in Georgia, and now is planning on going down to the Keys this spring. He and I were talking in the podcast, and he too we were talking about this notion of being self-reliant.
Yeah.
That you something goes wrong, you don't have easy access to stuff.
Right.
And even in the East Coast of the United States, which you think, oh, well, it's really populated, there's people all over the place. I mean, you can be in places, particularly on a sailboat, where you're a day away from civilization.
Right.
And if you're broken down, it may be even more than a day.
Yeah.
So there is this real value in sort of this notion of being self-reliant to the best of your abilities, so that if something does, even a simple thing like a fuel filter clogging, right? It's not just spin the filter off and spin the new one on. It's a little more involved than that.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
In a diesel. And I still remember the very first time I changed a fuel filter on my my diesel. It was like, oh my gosh, is it going to start again? And it took me like an hour.
Yeah.
Now I can do it a little quicker, but so I think getting knowledge is always a great thing.
Yeah.
Always a great thing.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. That's super. Hey, Carter, is there anything else that I should have asked you about the whole Coast Guard thing that I didn't, that you'd like to share with our listeners?
I think I told you, it's for me, it was a 9-month process.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we covered it all.
Perfect. Well, I think it's been a real informative episode. Thank you so much for being on the podcast again, Carter. And I'll see you up on the ski slopes here shortly.
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool interview, Bela. Great to hear what Carter's been up to. What do you think, given all the steps involved in this? What's your take on the value of getting a Coast Guard captain's license?
Well, I think the value is multifaceted. To me, the most obvious one is just you're getting smarter about being out on the water, and you're gaining more knowledge. And I'll tell you, depending upon where you sail, Narragansett Bay and sort of the Northeast has a lot of commercial traffic, a lot of tugboats, a lot of barges, all sorts of commercial vessels hauling stuff up and down the coast. And particularly at night, all the lights on a boat mean something. They're there for a purpose. And by looking at those lights, you can identify, okay, this is a tugboat and it's pulling something on a cable behind it, or it's a tugboat pushing something in front of it, or it's a big freighter, or it's a fishing boat, or it's at anchor. So all of those lights mean something. And that's one of the things that if you're going to get your Coast Guard license, you're going to have to understand, at least for the day you're taking the exam. Now, the value of it is, I'm going to forget that stuff, but I can quickly go someplace and look it up and figure out because I'm familiar with it, right? So sort of refreshing your knowledge, I think, is one of the important aspects of this. You learn it once, right? I solved many differential equations going through engineering school, but I couldn't do one today. But if I sat down, probably in 10 minutes, I could figure it out because I knew how to do it once in the past. And I think that's the real value here. You're going to learn a bunch of stuff, and then you're going to learn how to be able to access that quickly when you need it. So to me, that's the number one value of this. If you have any desires or dreams of taking people out on your boat for a charter, let's say, and you want to take 2 paying guests out for a week on your boat, you better have a Coast Guard license. Because if you don't, you're not going to be able to do it legally. And without it, you're probably not going to be able to get any kind of insurance to cover that sort of type of endeavor. So I think it's a must if you're thinking of doing that. I think the other important piece here is that it's helpful for obtaining insurance on your boat. The insurance underwriter will probably give you a better rate knowing that you have a Coast Guard license. And it's also going to enable you to, let's say you want to sail your boat to another country. Various different countries have different types of licensing requirements in order to command a boat, to drive a boat around. And the United States is pretty lax about those things. Other countries are less so, and they have higher requirements. So if you have a Coast Guard license, that's going to enable you to sort of do any of that without any challenges. So I think those were sort of the big pieces to me. What did you take away from our conversation, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been a recurring theme in this podcast, Bela, is that sailing is not so intimidating and not so difficult to get into. Right, that there's lots of ways that people can access this to get into sailing. But if you're really going to go all in like Carter is, or like you've done, right, that the more knowledge and skills you have and the more training you get, the more likely you are to, I think, A, enjoy what you're doing, and to B, to less likely to get yourself into a problem. Right. So to me, I think having the knowledge and the skills that go along with getting your Coast Guard captain's license and the certification to prove it, right, to the insurance company and things like this, seems to me there are a ton of benefits for getting this license. And I mean, you need to spend time on the water, which people are going to do anyways. You need to get these certifications, and doing things like getting a first aid certification. When you're going to be out in the boat overnight in the middle of nowhere, it's a no-brainer, right? So some of these things are like, oh, I got to go through all this stuff, but it really seems like the benefits are there to this level of knowledge if you're really going to get into sailing as a passion and do it regularly. So yeah, lots of benefits. Definitely costs involved, both financially and time-wise, in doing this. But to me, from the outside perspective, it seems like it's a no-brainer once you're getting past the proverbial dipping the toe in the water into sailing, and you're really going to jump in, do it. So I don't know, any last-minute tips, kind of, or final tips for listeners interested in going for this license, Bela?
I think the other thing I learned from my conversation with Carter was that you don't have to do this on your own. There are a lot of good schools that can sort of help you and educate you and guide you through the process. Some of those schools are in person. You can go for a week someplace and take it in the classroom if that's the kind of learner you are. Other schools you can do online, and some schools you can do hybrid, kind of a mix of those two. The other important thing is that you have to have a required minimum number of hours on the water, and you have to document it. So Carter kind of talked about this a fair amount in the podcast. So my point is, it takes planning ahead. You just don't decide today, I'm going to go get a Coast Guard license, because you're going to have to go back and figure out how to document all those hours that are required for you to demonstrate that you've been on the water. So if you're even thinking about it, you might want to have a log. I have a log on our boat, right? It's like Star Trek, captain's log, right? And it's basically, and in that book, I log everywhere we go, everywhere I've been, the general time we left in the morning, the time we were at anchor, etc. So if I ever wanted to do this, I have at least that document I can go back and sort of assemble that with. So think about that as a way of doing it, because you have to demonstrate that. So it does require some planning.
Yeah, it makes sense. So Bela, maybe it's time to wrap this up, but it'll be really cool, I think, to hear from Carter and next year and the year after is how much we can ask him, how much he's used the information that he's gained, and kind of what does he see as the value proposition of this kind of looking back in a longer term kind of situation. So let's put a mental note to remind ourselves the next time we check in with Carter to kind of get his take on this.
That's a great idea, Mike. What do you think? Wrap this one up?
Yep. Listeners, thanks for joining us for yet another episode. We hope you found the conversation with Carter interesting and thought-provoking, and maybe for some of you, this will give you the nudge you need to go for getting your captain's license. And as always, if you have questions about what we've discussed, please get in touch with us. Our email is sailingtheeast, that's all one word, @gmail.com.
And finally, if you enjoy the podcast, hit that like button on your app or leave us a review. It helps other people find us, and we end up being higher in their search. And several of our listeners have done that, have left us reviews or comments, or have reached out to us with emails. We always enjoy hearing from our listeners, so don't be bashful. If you have a comment or a suggestion, or if you know someone that would be a good guest on the show, let us know. So that's it for today's episode. Hope to see you out there on the water soon. So until next time, signing off from upstate New York. Take care.
And from over here in Münster, Germany, thanks for listening, and see everybody next time.